So this is part C of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, broadcasting under the banner and the barometer of Baby Angel Geronimo editions, timed at 21:50 hours GMT on Tuesday, 21st of February 2023. The latest news about the invasion of Nicola Bully's privacy and private life and the defamation of our family is that the OFCOM, which is supposed to exist to investigate and regulate broadcasting outlets, is set to investigate ITV and Sky News. This is another pack of lies. OFCOM is a thoroughly corrupt outfit created by the corrupt regime to perpetrate corruption. OFCOM will not find any fault with ITV or Sky News at all. What OFCOM will find at the most is some excuse, diversions, and pretexts to come across as if it is active in regulating the likes of the abusive broadcasting license holders. So we say again, our sincerest, bestest wishes for Nicola Bully and prayers for her, and our complete and total solidarity with her children, and her parents, and her sister, and her loved ones. Rest in eternal peace, Nicola. Rest in eternal peace, and we shall continue to pray. We go a bit back to this morning's Financial Times, that is Tuesday, the 21st of February 2023. Financial Times, we have noticed only today that Stephen Bush, the so-called mixed race court journalist with a Jewish tradition, that is the pronunciation in the entry by Wiki about Stephen Bush that we checked today. Nothing in that entry about his other side of his heritage. But in the piece today, in the Financial Times, Stephen Bush covers some of the aspects of what is called reparations, and I will discuss this at some length. The Stephen Bush picture accompanying the piece in the Financial Times today is a variation of the photograph that is included in the Wikipedia entry about him that I checked today. And the heading to the piece on the editorial page of the Financial Times is called Financial FT View, which is followed by opinion about society and letters, and outlook. So, Stephen Bush's piece appears under opinion, society, and it says problems with the argument for reparations. Now, whoever wrote that headline or heading obviously did a reading of the piece that is printed underneath. And the conclusion underlying that heading shows that Stephen Bush himself is following the racists, colonialists, imperialist agenda about reparations. Now, this is a slightly more substantial argument that the racists and colonialists and imperialists have produced via their stooge, Stephen Bush, than the Trevor terrible piece that we denounced a few days ago. That must have been published in the Times, but we shall check that one. And the liar, mental slave Trevor Terrible P-Lips, dropped a name, Laura Trevelyan. Now, Laura Trevelyan, I mean, the arrangement of that name itself is a giveaway. For a start, Trevelyan is not a common name in the British nomenclature, nor indeed is a combination Laura Trevelyan. So when she appeared as a BBC kind of name, Laura Trevelyan, and she had something about her that gave away the game, which is that she was not from the East End of London or similar background. And it is now evident that she indeed is a descendant of slave owners and colonialists. And in his piece, the official mental slave, Trevor Terrible P-Lips, found a way to link himself with Laura Trevelyan in the so-called college days. That mental slave has no shame, no grace, no dignity whatsoever. He's an opportunist liar through and through. There is no way, there is Trevelyan was his friend in college days or even acquaintance. But the mental slave fucker has no shame. There is no logic in his shamelessness. So he had to drop her name as if but the Stephen Bush, this child of mixed parentage, grew up somewhere in town. As a kind of trademark, labeled part of the quote Oxford name mythology at Balliol. Times by Rola Khalaf, who is herself a mental slave, shows that he is not. Stephen Bush is not representative of the population in Tower Hamlets, nor indeed is he representative of the population in terms of the agenda and the narrative and the perceptions. So, although there is a difference between the two of them, this one coming a few days after Trevor Terrible P leaves suggests two things: that Stephen Bush has actually digested offerings and contributions, including that made by Trevor Terrible P leaves. So he's not making the mistake of coming across as ill briefed, as he would have done had he not waited until a few days after Trevor Terrible P leaves and even Laura Trevelyan herself. Now, in the piece, Stephen Bush, as I have pointed out before I noted him as having joined the Financial Times, Stephen Bush the mixed race mulattoes, that is the European white parents. My definition of mulatto is a child of that kind of mixture and mix. Now, as a mulatto, Stephen Bush comes across typically as a mulatto. What do I mean by that? By that I mean that he does not identify himself precisely, clearly, transparently, truthfully as a member of the demography made up of people that had been enslaved, exploited, and racially abused. There are so many mulattoes that are in strategic places in the decision-making parts of the quote society in the UK that it is not very difficult to find the kind of tendency, the propensity, the pattern that is evident in the Financial Times piece by Stephen Bush. Now, that is the essence of the piece. But the image, first of all, of him is very clearly Afro hair. He could, as his other images over the last, let's say, 10 years of since he surfaced in my notice, his Afro hair is distinctly not pronounced in many of the images. But this one is very, very pronounced. In fact, it is more pronounced than even the piece that the Financial Times website has about him as a recently joined member of the Financial Times editorial team. And the reason for this overt and overly pronounced Afro hair style is intended to convey to the reader that nobody should doubt the authenticity of this Afro heritaged contributor to the cause of slavery and slave owning. And he is typically, for a mulatto, undermining, underplaying the moral, the ethical cause and case for reparations. That is what is happening in this piece. And what he's doing in addition to that is that he is now portraying himself as a descendant of the upper classes on his father's side, I think, in South Africa. Landowning upper classes. So, what the Financial Times Raula Khalaf typically is saying is that they have this afro haired black source of comment against reparation, and also somebody coming from the upper classes in South African black society, where his ancestors in South Africa benefited from the work in the mines. So this is the sophisticated combination of racist corruption and criminality that is employed today, 21st of February 2023, in order to justify the racist past and to deny the racist present obligations and duties owed to the descendants of the slaves, African slaves. Also, Stephen Bush is part echoing the African born conservative place woman who said that she supports colonialism and slavery. Colonialism and slavery of the African people by the Europeans. She said it openly. So first we had the terrible Phillips undermining those who demand proper reparation for the slave traders and slave owners. And then we have this Stephen Bush. And that conservative woman who openly boasted and supported and backed slave trade is mentioned here by me just in the context to create the picture, contextual picture, that despite the appearance, either in name or appearance in the hairstyle or in the pigmentation, Stephen Bush as a mulatto is only slightly less black than, let's say, Kemi, Badenoch, and so on. Badenoch. Putting aside the Scottish linguistic kind of construction, if you anglicize that word, bad Enoch, it turns out to be as bad as Enoch Powell, but even worse than Enoch Powell. Bad Enoch, meaning worse than the worst racist so called proponent. So we've got Stephen Bush, and then we've got Trevor Terrible Phillips. Now let's go back to checking on Trevor Terrible Phillips and his. We'll got the heading because accessing the item would take longer because of paywall. The Trevor Terrible Phillips is look at the fucking more on the fucking mental slave. Sir Mark Trevor Phillips, OBE, Ars, ARCS, FIC, fucking idiotic cunt, is a British writer, broadcaster, and former politician who served as chair of the London. What the fuck? 47 years since I had the cunt at an encounter in the Sheffield University where I exposed him by 4 points in front of 150 students at that time in 1979. And the cunt has never overcome my reduction of his mental slavery, my reduction of his mental slavery. And the Kant was appointed, I mean, he has been appointed to all these slavish things. Now, to those criminals, some of whom have benefited from their association with me, taking advantage of my generosity and kindness, those fucking morons think that the mental slave of the ilk and the description of the likes of Trevor Terrible Pealeaves being given a position as chair of the London Assembly, by that fact, gives them moral legitimacy. It doesn't. But to those idiots, it does. And the Kant is described as an early life, and he is described as having been born in Islington. Can you imagine? The youngest of 10 children. His parents emigrated from then British Guyana. Is it Guyana or Guyana pronounced in 1950? He spent his childhood partly in British Guyana and partly in Wood Green, North London. He attended Wood Green County Grammar School, which became Wood Green Comprehensive in 1967, on White Hart Lane, but took his A levels at Queen's College in Georgetown, Guyana. He returned to England to study at Imperial College London, where he obtained a BSc in chemistry in 1975. So, a year after he got this degree from the ICL, I caught him, the criminal, posing as the National Union of Students secretary. And I reduced the criminal, cunt, to his original mental slave status. To my colleagues present, this was an absolutely overdue task that had to be done, and they all supported me on what I had done. Expose the criminal right at the beginning. He's a liar, he's a crook. He worked on the London program. It's not called the London Weekend Television, and he was nepotistic. He had extramarital connections with at least one of the females that took part in the programs that he hosted or he presented. In addition to the fact that he corruptly, dishonestly, unethically, and immorally, as a spy, infiltrated what he thought was the Muslim community, but he didn't. Because the Muslim he married never came from the mainstream Muslim community. In any case, based on this artificiality of his connection with Islam, this criminal then did a documentary, according to this entry, what British Muslims really think, which followed similar themes to things we won't say about race. What a fucking shit. So this criminal has been, this Trevor Terrible Pealeves, has been a tool for racists like Harriet Harman. Harriet Harman and the Guardian's Polito Envy jointly treat Trevor Terrible Pealeves as their mental slave, in addition to his general role as the mental slave. In March 2020, Phillips was suspended from labor following the suspension was lifted in July 2020 on the fucking lying racist criminals at Wikipedia don't say why. It was because of the fucking anti-Muslim racist criminal Keir Starmer. The Wikipedia entry completely fucking ignorant, false, and shallow entry. It's a long entry, but it's a fucking shallow and a disservice to the objectivity that is most badly needed. So, Trevor Terrible Phillips is the official mental slave employed and engaged by the racists in Britain. And Stephen Bush is not of that category, but Stephen Bush, when it comes to these kind of topics, reparations, Stephen Bush is left with no real substance at all. He goes back to the so called upper class African ancestors and mixes up the whole idea about reparation. So let's talk about the reparations. And I shall quote from that FT piece that Stephen Bush has written, or is actually shown as the author of. What he's doing in this piece, let's go to the bottom of this piece. Over the course of its membership of the European Union, the United Kingdom has made a relatively trivial contribution to Ireland's economic development compared to its long term negative impact on Ireland's prosperity, and a large one to Central and Eastern Europe compared to the scale of the UK impact on the countries of the former USSR. And if Ukraine is one day a member of the EU, net contributors to the bloc's budget are likely to be paying to repair damages inflicted on the country by Vladimir Putin's Russia. What talk of reparations often does is confuse the nice to have a aim, which is that ideally those paying to fix the mistakes of the past will be the ones who have directly inflicted the damage or benefited from those mistakes, with an urgent one that those mistakes actually be fixed. Now, this kind of language is infantile because this stupid boy is being clever by a quarter. He is avoiding the use of racism, racist prejudice, and racist agenda. I mean, looking at his image, he could be mistaken because of the image, because of the afro hair. The aggressive afro hair in this image is so aggressive that it covers his left eye. Usually, his forehead is visible, all of it. But this one is a disguise to mislead people viewing this image as they're reading the piece underneath. And it's confusing. I mean, the whole Ukraine thing with British and Western colonialism and slavery and slave trade, slave ownership. So it's like Rola Khalaf, herself born to Muslim family, Muslim parents in the Lebanon, and raised as a Muslim allegedly. She is now editing so-called of the Financial Times, which is owned by the Japanese. I mean, what the fuck? The Japanese have no solidarity, absolutely no solidarity, no evidence of having any solidarity with the people of Africa. Most certainly not with the people of South Asia. And Japan is in Asia, not so far from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., etc. So Rola Khalaf is fucked up, as is the Financial Times, and the piece that they have put out on his appointment on the Financial Times website includes the stupid claim attributed to the stupid Stephen Bush, stupid Bush, that the Financial Times is the best newspaper. I mean, he has been appointed to a senior editorial post. What else would the fucker say other than sing the praise of Financial Times as the best newspaper? Fuck them. So this piece is a stupid piece, and that is what stupid Bush has been employed to do. So we go to the OFCOM, and OFCOM declaring that they're going to, well, they have actually written. Can you believe that they have written to ITV and Sky News? They haven't launched an investigation. They have written to ITV and Sky News. Just tells the story, which is that they are not only not going to investigate the behavior of ITV and channel, well, Sky News and other media outlets about Nicola Bulley. They're just going to kind of let the time pass and then say some stupid collection of things, expressing regret and concern and all the rubbish. What good will that do? We can't even discuss this because it's so disgusting. We pray for Nicola, and we pray for her daughters, and we pray for her parents and family. And we pray for Nicola to rest in eternal peace. By far the better way to refer to her this part of this edition. Baby Angel Geronimo is a witness. Baby Angel Geronimo is a witness, the bestest Baby Angel Geronimo, the bestest witness to the corrupt behavior of the British state. That includes the behavior of the likes of the British media, which is really servile to the agenda of the British state. And the agenda of the British state itself is servile to the secretive cabal of criminals that do not identify themselves in public. They don't transparently appear in their own kind of identities. They operate from behind the scenes. And the same case, the same application, the same analysis applies to the members of parliament, whether they're conservative, whether they're Labour, whether they're Lib Dems, or whether they're SNP. There is nothing that is more British Parliament for centuries. And no matter whether it's Keir Starmer, the political murderer of the Labour Party, that is the political murderer of the aims underlying the foundation and the founding of the Labour Party. Whether it's Keir Starmer, whether it's Michael Foot, makes no difference. Because politically, the Labour Party is not a distinct political program. The Labour Party has always been kind of iffy about the aims and the values that otherwise should be its founding aims and operational values. As I said before, and as the facts confirm and substantiate, during the 190 years of the British Empire, since June 1757, when the traitor Mir Zafar Ali Khan betrayed Nawab Siraj-ud-Dawla and paved the way for the British Empire by surrendering to the criminal Clive of the East India Company. When 100 years after the 1757, when 1857, a group of Muslim, Hindu, and Sikh members of the British colonial army nearly succeeded in staging the coup, but they were not successful. And the entry to that event is typically colonialist and racist and untruthful. It says, sepoy mutiny. Fuck them. They were not sepoys, you fucking shits. They were freedom fighters, you fuckers. And they did not stage a mutiny. That was part of the freedom movement. So that was sabotaged by the others. And then, less than 100 years later, well, when Subhash Chandra Bose appeared on the scene, political scene, he did something very similar to the 1857 freedom movement. He united the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Sikhs among the united army for independence against the British. But the likes of Jawaharlal Nehru and Mohan Chand Karamchand Gandhi, he's not a fucking Mahatma, he's Mohan Chand Karamchand Gandhi. They conspired. They conspired to undermine the influence of Netaji Subhash Bose, who was forced by the conspiracy to resign the post as chair or president of the Indian National Congress in 1939. And after Netaji's resignation, those two criminals, Jawaharlal Nehru and Mohanchand Karamchand Gandhi, were sent to jail by the British to say thank you to them for getting rid of Netaji Subhash Bose. It was during those 2 years of vacuum, absent leadership from the Congress, that the world's most brilliant strategist, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, took full advantage of the British and convinced them that the Brahmins would slaughter the Muslims of the subcontinent. And the Muslims of the subcontinent, therefore, needed an independent state of their own. Muhammad Ali Jinnah would not have succeeded had Netaji Subhash Bose been in post influential in leading the Indian National Congress. But the Indian National Congress was completely robbed of the only leader that the whole subcontinent needed, deserved, Subhash Bose. So when in Pakistan today, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, fronted by Imran Khan, makes the claim that they are engaged in achieving, establishing the Hakiki Azadi, the true independence from the British 76 years ago, they have the obligation. The Tehreek-e-Insaf has got the obligation and the duty to tell the truth about what happened with Subhash Bose, how Nehru and M.K. Gandhi betrayed Subhash Bose and the people of India. And all the things that Muhammad Ali Jinnah had to do were done. Now, what happened after the death of Muhammad Ali Jinnah is what needs to be accounted for, including what happened in 1971. And Tehreek-e-Insaf cannot just spout a slogan, Hakiki Azadi, by pretending that 1971 didn't happen. It did happen. And 1971 has contradiction to everything that M.A. Jinnah did and everything that Subhash Bose would have done. But Imran Khan hasn't mentioned Subhash Bose yet. How very odd. The only leader of the subcontinent, the whole subcontinent, that deserves mention before anyone else, before even Muhammad Ali Jinnah, is Subhash Bose. And if Imran Khan doesn't understand that, then he has no business being in politics in the name of the so-called remnant of Pakistan. What is Pakistan is remnant of Pakistan. The agenda and the purpose and the aims of Pakistan belonged with Pakistan, led by East Pakistan. Led by East Pakistan. Imran Khan is wrong about praising Sheikh Mujib's Awami League. That is wrong. The Awami League is a traitors organization. And Sheikh Mujib politically lacked the necessary ability and the depth of understanding to deserve to be leader, even of East Pakistan, as events have shown. So Imran Khan has got to get his facts absolutely right and immediately now. And he has to stop contradicting the manifesto he wants. On the one hand, he says he is derived from the sayings of the Prophet, peace be on him. And then he praises the most corrupt country on the face of the earth, which is the British state. We shall be talking about all of those, and we shall be talking about Shamima Begum, whatever the outcome of the so-called immigration court consideration of her appeal. We shall be talking about Shamima Begum, and we shall be talking about the role of the crooks, otherwise known as the Tahamdas Council, and other corrupt councils. So this is 52 minutes, nearly 53 minutes, ending at 22 hours 40 minutes GMT on Tuesday, the 21st of February 2023.